So I got this question on a recent video that I posted, and it came from Pedro, and it says, how long did it take you to feel confident you could start your own accounting business on your own, and what skills did you have to master in order to take that first step? And I replied to it on that video, and I put in there like, oh man, that is a complex question, and it might require a video. And I thought, well, why not put together a video in terms of, when is it okay to start your own firm? And that question itself is like any other question in tax or accounting, it depends. And it's going to vary from person to person, and each person's experience isn't going to look like someone else's, and each person is going to be comfortable with things that someone else might not be comfortable with. But what I can share is I can share my experience, and of course I can share some thoughts that are kind of around my experience and come out of my experience. So in terms of how long did it take me to feel confident, that's a tough question because I never really went into this expecting to open up my own firm. I studied accounting. I wanted to do the CPA route. In undergrad, I wasn't real sure what I wanted to do. Knowing that I wanted to do the CPA route, public accounting was basically audit or tax. So I took a tax class going into like my senior year. I didn't really want to do, actually, it was going into my junior year, or the whole time it was like, I don't really think I want to do tax, so that leaves audit. So when I did my internship, I did it in audit. When I graduated, I went and got the master's of accounting, and then I went to work in audit, and I was doing audit. And then an opportunity came up at a small firm in my hometown to go work with a gentleman who had a tax practice for about 30, 35 years at the time. He wanted someone to come in, learn from him, work for him, and take over his firm. And I thought that sounded exciting. It was getting back to my hometown. It was a place where I wanted to live. It was exciting because it was a small firm. I could work with smaller clients. I could work directly with business owners instead of the big firm that I was in, working with staff at companies where I didn't really have any value other than just the hours that I could put in. I was more of an advisor on the tax side than the audit side. The audit side, you go in, you audit the financials, you leave. But as a tax person, how can I help you? How can I help you understand your taxes? How can I help you get your taxes down? So all of those things sounded really exciting to me. And then owning my own firm, that was the first time that thought had ever crossed my mind. And it sounded exciting too. I get to set the culture. I get to decide some things. Now, I would have been purchasing a firm, which means some culture and some processes and clients would have all come with that. Now, through a whole lot of life and things that happened, I did not purchase that firm. On a personal side, my faith in Jesus is very important to me, as it is for the rest of my family. And we just felt like God was leading us in a different direction after a few years. So after 4 years with that firm, I ended up going in a different direction. I went into industry. I worked for a nonprofit Christian ministry campus ministry organization. And I was doing some accounting work for them. That was my role. I did some ministry work during the summers with students. And during the year, the majority of the year, I did accounting work in the campus ministry. And then I ended up moving to Florida to take a role at headquarters, where I was an internal fractional CFO, basically, for multiple divisions within our organization. And then felt like God was leading me back into public accounting, into tax. And that's when I was praying about that and looking at that. I had absolutely zero desire or feeling like I was being led to go work at another firm. And so really it was, if I'm going to leave this role that I enjoyed and go back into tax, I'm going to do it on my own and launch a firm. I don't remember much else about that other than knowing that I wasn't going to go work at a firm. I was going to either launch my own or stay where I was. And through a lot of prayer, talking with my wife, talking to other people that I trust, who I got guidance from, talking to another gentleman who had owned a firm for 30-some years, and asking him if he thought it was a good idea to get into this at this point in time. This was 2019, 2018, going into 19. I decided to do it. So, how long did it take to feel confident? Well, I was 35, and it had been about 14 years, since I had graduated. I spent 5 years I spent 5 busy seasons doing tax. I spent 1 doing audit, so that's 6. And then I spent 7 with that firm, so that's 13. So I had been working for about 13 years. Now, all of that wasn't in tax, right? I had spent a total of 5 busy seasons in tax. And then I spent a year before that in audit. I spent 7 in industry. But during those 7 in industry, I did do some tax returns on the side as pro bono. And then also I did do some on the side just to cover the cost of my CPE and my CPA license to keep it active. So I was still involved. Most all of my CPE I still did in tax because I didn't need my CPA license for industry. I did a few things for industry. They were basically nonprofit tax issues that I did there. And so even though I went into industry, I was still learning staying up to date on all individual and small business tax stuff. I was still doing all my CPE there, and I still was getting some reps, not as many as now, but I was still getting some reps every year in preparing tax returns. So I didn't leave tax and come back to it. It was still a part of who I was and what I was doing. I still was talking to people just in general conversations about and giving tax advice because it was something that I enjoyed. It was something I knew about, something I enjoyed, something I stayed up to date on. So all in all, I had been in and around and staying up to date on and learning about taxes for about 12 years before I launched my firm. So the confidence was there. Now, that may not be your situation. You may not want to wait that long. My recommendation would be at least 3 to 5 busy seasons under someone who is experienced and can oversee your work and can answer questions when they come up, because that experience is going to be super valuable. You're going to get to see something where they already know what they're doing. You're learning from them. You're going to be doing things like there were things that I researched that person that I worked for hadn't really done in the past, but I researched it. He overlooked it. We talked about it. And I learned so much in those 4 tax seasons that I spent working directly under him with him as a supervisor. He also had me review his tax returns. So I was going through seeing how he prepared returns. I learned processes, client communication. I learned how to track work. I learned the tax technicality, the technical pieces, how to do research. I learned so much in those years. I don't think 1 year is going to be enough for you. I don't think 2 is. 3 would probably be my minimum, and I would say 4 to 5 would be ideal. Like I said, I spent 4 under him and another one under a different person at a different firm, and to me, that was plenty. Now, if that was all I did, would I have left and gone and opened up my own firm? I think so, because at the end of that 5-year mark, at the end of that 4-year mark, when I decided to go in a different direction, we were getting pretty close to when I was going to purchase that firm. And I felt pretty comfortable at the time with that. I was comfortable with the clients I had. I was comfortable with the work we were doing. And I think that would have been sufficient. But I don't really know. I ended up going in a different direction. And again, it was 7 more years later, 7 more years of staying up to date, 7 more years of talking to people about taxes. So I had a ton of time and experience, and I had a great reputation too. I mean, just everyone that I knew, even though I was in ministry at the time doing accounting work, everyone still knew because I still talked about taxes a bunch. I still, random times, just hanging out with friends or at different places, like tax questions would come up and I would talk to them about that. So having a reputation for that really helped when I launched my firm because people knew that I knew what I was talking about. People knew that I was in the tax space. People thought about me when it came to tax questions. And so that really helped when it came to getting a foundation of clients to build up income to support my family. So that's huge. So that's kind of how long did it take? My story's a little bit different. 12 years before I launched my firm, but I think I would have been confident and comfortable doing it at that 4 to 5 year mark. And I would say three busy seasons. The first busy season, you're just figuring out what the heck's going on. The second, you're starting to get a little bit more comfortable. You're starting to figure out your rhythm. By year 3, you're cruising pretty good. At the end of year 3, I would say that you go into a year 4 or 5 just to continue to build confidence, right? But you've pretty much figured it out by going into year 4. You've got some good routines. You've learned how to research questions. You learned how to talk to clients. And then what skills do you have to master in order to take that first step? So by far, the number one skill that you want to make sure you have to do, which is the reason why I say 3 to 5 years of experience, is you absolutely got to know the tax piece, right? And you don't have to know all of the tax code. I don't do partnership returns. There's certain industries I don't do. I don't deal with organizations that have to report on an accrual basis. I avoid cryptocurrency. I do minor cryptocurrency, but I avoid the headache cryptocurrency stuff. All that to say is there's so much in the tax code you cannot know it all, but you need to have a skill in the tax pieces that you're going to be dealing with, right? The types of clients that you want, the tax situations they have, you need to be skilled in that. I probably spent too much time on that because that's an obvious, right? Like you don't want to go out and launch your own firm without knowing how to do anything. Can you look stuff up? Can you do research? Yes, but you want to have a core competency in that. You don't want to have to research everything. You don't want to go out and open up a firm on your own after no years of experience under someone. People do that. I definitely do not recommend that. And you don't want to do it after 1 year. You want to have a good foundation of technical knowledge before you launch your own firm. Now, the other skills that you may not think about, you've got to be self-motivated. There is no one to tell you you need to work today. There's no one to tell you you need to start work at 7 and work till 5, or you need to start at 8 and work till 5. Now, you may not need to work that long, but you've got to be self-motivated to get whatever work is done on your plate. You've got to be organized to be able to get it all done in a timely manner, especially if you're going to do tax. I mean, I do 380 some 1040 tax returns this year. I do them on a first in, first out basis, but I use TaxDome. I have a pipeline. I have a system that I've put in place so I know what to work on that day, what to prioritize. And it's not perfect. There are times where things go and I'm like, oh man, I really should have done that by now. And I email the client. I say, I'm sorry, I haven't got to this yet, but I'm on it now. And so you've got to be self-motivated. You've got to be detail-oriented. Otherwise, stuff is going to slip through the crack. Even in just running your own firm, I have to have a business tax receipt in the county of county in Orange County. I have to have a permit to run a home office. I have to register my CPA firm and renew the license there. I have to keep track of my CPE and make sure that it is done on time and reported correctly. And I have to set up the payroll and do the payroll for myself and for my employees. I mean, there's so much that goes into this other than just doing the work. So if you want to own your own firm, you've got to be able to handle all of that. You have to be able to handle the weight of everything being on your shoulders. If something doesn't get done, I don't care how many contractors you have, how many employees you hire, who that work was given to as a responsibility as the firm owner, it's yours. The client will look to you, and you need to realize it's your responsibility. Again, if I take a client on and I assign it to an employee, I can hold the employee accountable. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility if it gets done or not as the firm owner. And so you need to be able to carry that weight. And that is a huge weight. That is a big piece of being the firm owner and running your own business. The other skills that you may not think about too much, communication. Communication is up there. Along with the technical piece and being detail-oriented and making sure that you're a self-motivator is the communication. One, because you are in sales. I don't care what you're doing, you're in sales. Everybody is in sales, but you are really in sales as the firm owner. You have to sell yourself, you have to sell the services, and sales isn't a sleazy thing, but you've got to communicate value. Hey, you have a problem, you're looking for something, I can solve that problem. You've got to be able to clearly communicate that. You got to be able to clearly communicate it in a way where your potential clients see, this is my issue, this is the value you deliver, and this is how it solves my issue. Therefore, I want to hire you. If you can't communicate, then you're not going to be able to land clients. The other thing is, if you can't communicate, your clients aren't going to be satisfied and they're going to leave you. So even if you do land the client, communication is huge. The number one complaint I hear from clients coming to me from other firms is poor communication. it is the number one reason clients leave. So communication is up there in those top 5 skills that you need. I also believe that if you're going to do business returns, you absolutely have to have a skill set in QuickBooks Online and the others. But QuickBooks Online is what most people use. But you have to have small business bookkeeping skills. You need to really understand double entry accounting, making debits, making credits, looking at general ledger, making sure that you can clean up the books. Every business tax return that I have, I've got 45 of them. 43 to 44 of them need cleanup before I prepare the tax return. You also have to do, in most cases, and even if you don't have to, you should do the balance sheet and the M1 reconciliation of book to tax income and the M2 reconciliation of the AAA account on an S corporation. But you need to be able to tie out, understand the balance sheet, assets, liabilities, the equity section, how the equity section rolls from year to year, the income statement, and the general ledger. You need to do that if you're going to be preparing business tax returns. If you don't understand the accounting side, you should not do a business tax return. Or you should pair up with a bookkeeper that you really, really, really trust to make sure that the financials are correct. And even then, you still got to understand them enough to look back through them, I think, before you trust those to prepare a tax return. If you just want to do personal tax returns, that's fine. You don't need to have that accounting and financial statement knowledge. But if you want to do any business tax returns, you absolutely need to. If you're going to do Schedule C, it's not quite as important, but it still is important. If you're going to do a business on Schedule C, I think you should have that skill set too. So those are, I think there were 5 of them. I didn't really keep count, but those are the skills that you absolutely need to have. I mean, I also think you need to be pretty personable, pretty social. You need to be able to, again, that falls into that communication tab, but you're gonna have to be talking to people all the time, networking with people, networking with peers, networking with other professionals like CFPs or attorneys so that you can get referrals from them, and then communicating with clients and potential clients and being able to be kind of outgoing and social in order for people to like you and to want to hire you. You know, the more likable you are, the more people are going to hire you. And so, yeah, and then you need the technical skills to back it up so that you don't screw up people's taxes. So that was pretty much kind of my experience, how long it took to be confident, what I think you need to do in order to build up that confidence and be able to get the experience you need to launch on your own, and then the skills that you need in order to launch your own firm. I'm sure, because I did not plan this out, it was about 2 hours ago that I read the comment, and then I had a couple of meetings, and then I was like, I'm going to go ahead and record that video. So I jumped in, recorded the video. So I'm sure I left something out, but leave in the comments any follow-up questions that you have. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video, or anything that you would add to this that you think maybe I forgot to talk about. Add those in the comments. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it's encouraging, and I hope that you're enjoying the videos. Thanks for watching.